The clock over the focal station lobby struck 12 p.m., its reverberation gulped by the immense vacancy of the rail route station. Faint lights flashed above, creating shocking shaded areas on the broke tiles. The station was uncommonly calm, save for a periodic leave of a rodent or the delicate stir of papers vacillating in the draft. Analyst Elena Hart remained at stage 6, her raincoat sticking to her in the moist chill. A battered bag sat deserted on the seat close to her, its calfskin worn and its lock obviously broken. It was the explanation she had been called here. A report of a dubious thing tracked down by a janitor. Inside the bag, she'd found a grouping of items: a solitary, dark glove, a blurred photo of a young lady grinning by the ocean, and a gold pocket watch, its hands halted at unequivocally 11:47. Generally chilling of every one of a blood-stained train passed to an objective nobody perceived: Caro's End. Her accomplice, analyst Lucas Award, drew nearer from the opposite finish of the stage, holding 2 steaming cups of espresso. "No indication of the proprietor?" Elena inquired. Lucas shook his head. "Not a spirit. Place feels like a burial chamber." Before Elena could answer, the station's amplifiers snapped to life. Static murmured, trailed by a mutilated voice. "The last train to Caro's End is showing up not long from now at stage 6. Travelers, kindly board right away." Elena and Lucas traded uncomfortable looks. "Caro's End?" Lucas murmured. "That is not on any guide I know." The air developed weighty, thick with an unnatural quietness. Then, at that point, came the sound. Faint from the start, the musical clack of wheels against tracks. A train rose up out of the haziness, its appearance shrouded in a cover of mist. The train was old, its darkened steel damaged by rust and time, and its windows totally dark as though covering insider facts. As the train murmured to a stop, its entryways slid open with a moan. The stage stayed void, yet Elena felt the heaviness of concealed eyes watching her. "We want to call for reinforcement," Lucas murmured, venturing back. Yet Elena was at that point moving, her interest overwhelming her wariness. She ventured into the train's faintly lit inside. The smell of moist wood and something metallic, coppery, swirled into the atmosphere. Every compartment she passed was empty. At this point, each seat held individual possessions: a neglected scarf, a half-eaten sandwich, a kid's toy. Lucas wavered before hesitantly following her. "This is crazy, Elena. There's nobody here." In the last carriage, they found something that made their blood run cold: a flawless white envelope stuck to the seat with a blade. On the envelope, their names were written in spidery penmanship. Elena went after it. Her fingers shudder as she opened the envelope. Inside was a solitary piece of paper with 4 words. Before they could respond, the train entryways forcibly closed, locking them inside. The lights glimmered fiercely, and the train started to move. "Elena, we want to stop this thing," Lucas hollered, beating on the entryways. The train got a move on, rushing into the obscurity. The windows offered no view, just a twirling, dark void. The air became colder and a low murmur filled the carriage, a sound that felt alive, similar to the mumble of far-off voices. Then, from the shadows toward the finish of the carriage, a figure arose. A man in an outdated guide's uniform. His face was pale, his eyes empty, pits of murkiness. "Tickets, please," he grated, broadening a skeletal hand. Neither Elena nor Lucas moved, frozen in fear. The guide's empty look went to the pocket watch in his other hand. "You're late," he said. "The admission should be paid." Also, with that, the lights went out, diving them into dimness. The main sound was the persevering bang of wheels on the tracks, conveying them to an objective they could never get back from. At the point when Elena woke up, her general surroundings was washed in a faint, extraordinary sparkle. She was, as of now, not in the train carriage yet remaining on a vacant stage. The air was weighty, resembling moist earth and rot. Faint murmurs reverberated somewhere far off, however the station seemed deserted. "Lucas?" she called out, her voice shaking. No reaction. She turned in wild-eyed circles, her breath noticeable in the virus air. The stage extended unendingly into shadows, without any signs or markings to show where she was. The train was gone, as was Lucas. A weak light gleamed somewhere out there. It came from an old station master's office roosted at the edge of the stage. Expecting replies, Elena advanced to it, her strides reverberating on the broke cement. Inside, the room was little and jumbled with relics of some other time. Dusty records, blurred maps, and a discolored chime on the work area. A solitary light enlightened the room, projecting long, rugged shadows. On the work area lay another envelope. This one was addressed exclusively to her, a similar spidery penmanship as in the past. Her hand shook as she opened it. The message was brief. An unexpected commotion behind her, like a scratching of metal, made her twirl around. The guide was there, his empty eyes drilling into her. "You've remained excessively lengthy," he said, his voice reverberating as though it came from profound inside the earth. "You have a decision, criminal investigator. One ticket, one excursion. However, the cost is steep." "What are you referring to?" Elena requested, her voice scarcely consistent. "Where am I? Where's Lucas?" The guide shifted his head, a peculiar mimicry of interest. "Lucas has boarded his train. Every spirit should pay its admission in their own particular manner. Presently, it is your move." Elena's eyes dashed around the room, looking for a weapon, a leave, anything. In any case, there was nothing. The guide broadened his skeletal hand, holding a solitary ticket. The words Caro's end gleamed faintly in gold. "Take it or remain. Yet know this. The more you wait, the harder the decision becomes." A profound, resounding horn sounded from the distance, flagging the appearance of another train. Elena delayed, her impulses shouting at her to run, yet there was no place to go. "Why me?" she murmured, her voice scarcely perceptible. The guide's demeanor turned into something like a grin. "You posed some unacceptable inquiries. You pursued shadows, got into places you didn't have a place. Also, presently, you should pick board the train, or, on the other hand, face what holds up in obscurity." Once more the horn sounded, stronger this time, shaking the ground underneath her feet. "What occurs in the event that I don't take it?" she asked, her voice resistant. The guide ventured nearer, his breath a freezing wind all over. "Then, at that point, you stay here, between universes. No way out, no closure." The shadows toward the sides of the room started to squirm, coming toward her with inky ringlets. There was no time left. Elena's hand floated over the ticket. She realized taking it implied venturing into the obscure, yet remaining implied specific destruction. The horn blast one last time, stunning and dire, and afterward, with a full breath and shaking resolve, she took the ticket. The guide's empty eyes gleamed with fulfillment. "Shrewd decision," he mumbled. The stage broke down around her, gulped by a blinding light. At the point when the light blurred, Elena wound up back in the train carriage, alone. The articles from the bag were dissipated on the seat alongside her. The glove, the photo, the pocket watch. Once more, the train was moving, quicker and quicker, as though dashing toward a concealed skyline. Somewhere out there, a weak shine showed up. A station dissimilar to any she had at any point seen, its engineering unthinkably contorted, its signs written in a language she was unable to fathom. She grasped the ticket firmly, her pulse beating in her ears. The train shrieked as it moved toward the station. Sparkles flew from the wheels, projecting brief glimmers of light into the stifling haziness. Elena squeezed her face to the window, attempting to figure out the odd moving engineering ahead. Towers appeared to curve and turn unnaturally, and the station's foundation glimmered all through presence like a blurring memory. At the point when the train at last stopped, the entryway slid open with a low moan. A weighty quiet followed, broken exclusively by the weak murmur of the inconspicuous hardware keeping this spot alive, or something near it. Elena delayed, her fingers holding the edge of the seat. Her impulses shouted at her to remain inside, however the guide's voice reverberated to her. The more you wait, the harder the decision becomes. She ventured out onto the stage, the ground underneath her feet cold and unfaltering. The air was thick, practically fluid, sticking to her skin and making it hard to relax. The station was frightfully unfilled, yet Elena felt a presence. Many eyes, inconspicuous however certain, followed everything she might do. She turned strongly, however there was nothing, simply shadows that appeared to beat with life. Ahead, a fabulous arrangement of steps prompted a gigantic entryway, its casing cut with unpredictable images that gleamed faintly in shades of gold and blood red. At the foundation of the steps stood a figure. It wasn't the guide. This individual, or thing, was taller, hung in a dim robe that moved like alive. Its face was clouded by a smooth, intelligent veil, and in its grasp, it held a fancy record bound in dark cowhide. Elena Hart, it said, its voice profound and full, as though the actual walls of the station talked. "You've shown up." "What is this spot?" Elena requested, her voice reverberating in the huge void. The figure shifted its head, an agitating motion that felt practically entertained. "This is Caro's end, the intersection of decision, the record of obligations. Also, the retribution of insights." "I didn't request to be here," she snapped. "However, you procured it," the figure answered, opening the record. Its pages shined faintly, loaded up with lines of text that appeared to move and rework themselves as Elena watched. "You've looked for answers as long as you can remember, haven't you? Dug where others wouldn't, followed the paths others disregarded. Truth has a value, investigator, and this evening it comes due." The words struck her like a blow. "I was simply taking care of my business," she said, her voice calmer at this point. The figure turned a page, its concealed face unintelligible. "Maybe. Be that as it may, each inquiry you posed, each stone you upset, undulated into places you can't fathom. Presently you should confront the results." The figure motioned toward the transcending entryway behind it. "Past lies the response you look for, the reality of this spot, of your motivation. In any case, be cautioned. When you know, you can't return. The decision is yours, Elena Hart. Open the entryway. Or, on the other hand, stay here, always fastened to the inquiries that brought you." Her heart beat as she gazed at the entryway. Behind her, the shadows on the stage became hazier, closer, practically ravenous. She could feel them going after her, their murmurs becoming stronger, endless, yet loaded up with danger. She turned around to the figure. "What's the cost?" The figure shut the record. "Everything." Elena moved forward, then another, everyone heavier than the last. She arrived at the foundation of the steps and put a hand on the chilly cut railing. "I really want to be aware," she said, her voice scarcely over a murmur. The figure moved to one side, its dim robe brushing against her as she rose the steps. The entryway lingered ahead, its images gleaming more brilliant with each step. At the point when she arrived at the top, the entryway squeaked open all alone, uncovering a blinding light. It poured over her, warm and calling, yet some way or another loaded up with a terrible weight. She delayed the slightest bit prior to venturing through. Elena's shouts reverberated through the station, carried on the breeze like a blurring song. Yet again, the entryway closed, and the figure moved back in the direction of the record, opening it. A solitary name vanished from its pages. Someplace somewhere far off, the train's horn sounded once more. One more traveler was coming. As the blinding light gulped her, Elena felt as though her body was being extended and turned, her very substance unwound and reassembled. At the point when she could at last inhale once more, she was no longer at Caro's end. She remained in a huge, ruined span, a scene of powder-colored dark extending perpetually every which way. The sky was a twirling vortex of dark and red, and the air conveyed a weak metallic tang, similar to the waiting fragrance of blood. Somewhere out there, she saw it, a singular construction, transcending and rakish, looking like a clock tower frozen mid-breakdown. Its surface sparkled with moving images, similar ones cut into the entryway at Caro's end. Elena advanced toward it, her means drowsy like the ground opposed all her developments. Murmurs followed her, low and persistent, becoming stronger with each step. They weren't simply irregular sounds. They were parts of voices she perceived. For what reason did you leave? You shouldn't have looked. This is your shortcoming. The voices of individuals she had fizzled, individuals whose cases she hadn't addressed, individuals she had let down. "Quiet down," she yelled, yet the voices just giggled, awful and deriding. At long last, she arrived at the foundation of the construction. Very close, it was significantly really forcing, its surface bursting at the seams with moving examples. A solitary entryway remained at its base, plain and unadorned. Elena faltered, her hand drifting over the handle. She knew intuitively that whatever lay past would be the climax of everything. Reality she had looked for, the solution to the inquiry that had tormented her since she boarded the train. Calling her boldness, she pushed the entryway open. Inside was a round chamber washed in faint, throbbing light. The walls were fixed with innumerable racks, each loaded up with objects, watches, photos, rings, letters. Some were unblemished, others old and rotted. At the focal point of the room stood a platform, and on it lay the bag she had found at the station. It was shut now, its messed-up lock supplanted with a plain seal. "Elena," a voice called. She twirled around. Remaining opposite her was Lucas, his face pale and drawn. "Lucas, you're alive!" she cried, running toward him. Be that as it may, as she contacted him, he held up a hand, halting her. "Don't. I'm not what you think I'm." "What are you referring to?" Lucas signaled to the platform. "This isn't about me. It's about you. That bag. It holds all that you've covered. Your second thoughts, your missteps, your apprehensions." Elena looked at the bag. It appeared to beat faintly, like alive. "You really want to open it," Lucas said. "No," she expressed, venturing back. "I've previously seen what's inside, not everything," his voice mellowed. "Reality, Elena. Every last bit of it." The murmurs around her became stronger, more unyielding. The air appeared to drone with energy, pushing down on her. She shook her head. "I didn't come here for this. I came for replies, not anything that this is." "This is the response," Lucas said, his voice firm at this point. "You can't push ahead until you face it. Open the bag, Elena." Her hands shuddered as she ventured toward the platform. Each fiber of her being shouted at her to stop, to turn around, to run. Yet, there was no place else to go. She connected, her fingers brushing against the virus cowhide. The seal disintegrated at her touch, and the bag sprang open. From the start, it reflected just her. However, at that point the picture started to move. She considered herself to be a youngster, falling down in a dim room. She saw the second she neglected to save a missing young lady, the lament that had tormented her from that point forward. She saw the essences of individuals she'd violated, the ones she'd hurt in her constant quest for reality. The mirror started to talk, not with words, but rather with sentiments. It showed her the heaviness of her moves, the ways not made, the expense of her decisions. Tears gushed down her face as reality overpowered her. This wasn't about the cases she had addressed or the secrets she had disentangled. It was about her blemishes, her culpability, her refusal to relinquish the past. As the dreams blurred, the bag snapped shut. The room around her disintegrated, and she wound up remaining back on the unfilled stage at Caro's End. The train was pausing, its entryways open. The guide remained alongside it, his empty eyes watching her. "Have you tracked down your response?" he inquired. Elena gestured, her voice consistent interestingly. "I have." The guide moved to one side, motioning toward the train. Then, at that point, the time has come to leave. She boarded without a second thought, the load on her shoulders some way or another lighter. The train started to move, diverting her from Caro's End. This time, she wasn't anxious about the objective. As the train thundered forward, Elena sat by the window, watching the interminable void outside progressively give approach to moving scenes. From the beginning, the view was dull and infertile, with spiked bluffs and barren fields. Yet, as the train went ahead, faint gleams of light started to show up, little brilliant bits that moved like fireflies somewhere far off. Interestingly, since venturing onto the train, she felt a feeling of quiet. It was incomplete, yet it was there. A little delicate coal of harmony. She rested her head up against the cool glass and shut her eyes, letting the consistent mood of the wheels hush her into a daze. Minutes, or maybe hours after the fact, a voice interfered with her viewpoints. "Excuse me." She woke up and turned. A man had showed up in the seat opposite her. He was wearing a basic suit, his face kind however new. His eyes, nonetheless, held a profundity that made her uncomfortable, like he could see straight into her spirit. "Who are you?" she asked circumspectly. He grinned faintly. "Simply one more traveler." "I didn't see you board." "You wouldn't have," he said just, then motioned through the window. "You're close at this point, to where you should be." Elena scowled. "Also, where could that be?" He didn't answer right away. All things being equal, he put a little item on the table between them. It was a watch, not the one from the bag, but rather an alternate one, its face flawless and its hands moving consistently. "This is for you," he said. She delayed. "What is it?" "An update. Of time lost and opportunity yet to arrive. Of what is important." Elena gazed at the watch, its delicate ticking filling the quiet. "Why give this to me?" The man inclined forward, his appearance delicate yet firm. "Since you've spent such a great deal your life pursuing responses, Elena, continuously taking off from something, this is to assist you with making sure to stay composed." His words evoked an emotional response profound inside her, and she wound up gesturing, even as tears welled in her eyes. She connected and took the watch, its weight shockingly soothing in her grasp. At the point when she turned upward once more, the man was no more. The train started to slow, and a delicate ring reverberated through the carriage. Elena looked through the window and saw a station materializing. It was nothing similar to Caro's End. This station was brilliant, its design warm and inviting, washed in brilliant daylight. Blossoms sprouted along the stage, their dynamic varieties a glaring difference to the grimness she'd abandoned. The train ground to a halt, and the entryways slid open. Briefly, Elena faltered. However, at that point she stood, holding the watch firmly, and ventured onto the stage. The world past the station was stunning. Moving slopes extended into the distance, spotted with trees that influenced tenderly in the breeze. A little way driven away from the station, twisting toward a far-off town where smoke twisted from stacks and chuckling repeated faintly in the air. She felt something she hadn't encountered in years: trust. As she ventured out down the way, the guide's voice repeated faintly behind her. However, when she turned, the train and stage had disappeared. "Your process is yours now, Elena. Use it well." Also, interestingly, she grinned, strolling toward the obscure, not with dread, but rather with expectation for what lay ahead. Elena strolled along the winding way, the daylight warm all over and the far-off hints of life directing her means. With each step, the load on her chest facilitated, supplanted by a developing feeling of clearness. The town materialized, its cobblestone roads buzzing with individuals moving about their day. Youngsters played, vendors bargained, and the air was loaded up with the fragrance of new bread and blossoming blossoms. However, notwithstanding the glow of the scene, something about the spot felt natural. As she drew closer, an older lady sitting by a wellspring gazed upward and grinned at her. "Welcome back, Elena," she said energetically. Elena froze. "Back? I've never been here." The lady laughed delicately, her eyes sparkling. "Haven't you? You've strolled this way previously, in manners you don't recall. However, this time, you found what you expected to obviously see it." Elena felt a sense of foreboding deep in her soul. She needed to ask what the lady implied, yet the words wouldn't come. All things considered, the elderly person signaled toward the focal point of the town, where a humble home remained with its entryway somewhat slightly open. "Go on," she said. "It's hanging tight for you." Elena faltered, then, at that point, gestured and strolled toward the house. As she ventured inside, the world appeared to move once more, not with murkiness or dread this time, but rather with a significant feeling of having a place. The inside was basic at this point, welcoming, loaded up with warm light and the aroma of new spices. On a wooden table in the focal point of the room sat the bag, completely flawless. Close to it was the watch she currently grasped. She put the watch down close to the bag and took a full breath prior to opening it one final time. Inside, there were no photos, no gloves, no relics of the past, just a solitary piece of paper, collapsed conveniently. She got it and unfurled it, her hands consistent notwithstanding the dashing of her heart. The note read. Tears gushed down her face as she collapsed the note and set it back in the bag. Without precedent for years, she felt great. The anxious need to pursue the past, to settle each secret, to convey each lament. It was no more. Elena ventured back outside, the daylight washing her in its glow. The town, the slopes, and individuals felt like a commitment of harmony, a daily existence she could at last hug. What's more, as she strolled forward into that fresh start, the train's far-off horn sounded one final time prior to blurring into quietness.
Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button for more videos. Until next time.